I feel like a lot of people have been asking for more tier list stuff recently. This is the content I need to start a Reg F Draft Leagues. I'm going to let you know right now that Reg F and Reg F Draft are very different. So, for example, a Pokemon like Amoonguss is going to be really, really good in Reg F because it's a Pokemon that can do a lot of things. Problem with Amoonguss in Draft is it's really easy to check Amoonguss if you know they have Amoonguss. It takes a Grass Terra, a Goggles. Amoonguss ends up being like a liability in a lot of draft situations. Same thing goes for like Incineroar. Like you can put items like a Clear Amulet like you would not normally run. So it's actually this will not help you in Draft League at all. This like if you want a really good example of like drafting in Reg F, I really suggest you take a look at who drafted what in the recent SPL Draft League that I took part in with like Cybertron, JoeUX9, Moxie Boosted, and Pokeaim. There was a player who drafted like Prim, Incin Amoonguss, like balance, like perfect balance. It's easy to tech for that stuff when you know it's there, right? Like it's really easy to tech for that stuff. And I played them in the very first week before I even knew how to use my team, and I dumpstered it, right? And then like I think Necra also got a really cool draft where she had like Rock, Ogerpon, and Volk, and she had like a really cool like Volk balance team. And those teams can be like picked apart in draft if you know that that's what they have to have, right? So it's one of those things that, like, you know, that's where you start seeing like the double kick tech come out. That's where you start seeing like a bunch of like weird stuff. So like the Pokemon that are really good need to be really oppressive in draft, if that makes any sense. So, for example, instead of getting something, you know, like an Amoonguss, you'd want something like Pokeaim, instead of getting an Amoonguss, got a Furret, something with Frisk, because it was still somewhat close sheet, right? He got access to the same amount of redirection with the same like amount of like crazy RNG that could happen, and not just something that like loses to safety goggles, right? So it was fun. You know, draft can be really hard, but at the same time, like, it's just a different set of skills, I would say. You would think that I'd be someone that, like, would be cracked at draft, but I'm not. I'm not. You would think that I would be, by all things considered, but I'm not. I'm okay at draft, though. Drafted is a different skill than anti-meta because it's anti-one person. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It's not anti-meta, it's really hyper evolving how to solve for X. It's like the full, like, purest form of flowcharting, I think. So that's my thoughts on draft. It can be like a really fun experience, but more often than not, like, there's always like an unlimited ways to like optimize things. Like, that's the cool thing about draft is like anyone can win anything, but you just have to really think about like your ability to like solve a meta, right? Because like the cool thing about draft, if you're someone that really likes draft, is like imagine the person you're playing against and you like are the meta and you have to solve for X. It's like the ability like to, you know, problem solve your way out of like any situation and create like 100% truths to where like this is a safe lead, this will condition this, they have to do this or why the XYZ happens. And you can create a lot of like, I like to call them skill checks, where your opponent has to like meet you at a specific level and play a specific way. You know, this is going to sound so dumb, but I'm like one of the few people that's like been around for like all of VGC, right? There's not that many of us. There's probably less than 10. And when I say I've been around for all of VGC, I was familiar with what was going on in like 09 and 010, like... And I'm friends with a lot of the people that top cut the events in 09 and 010, and I've heard the stories firsthand from those people. So it's like I feel like I'm still, you know, I get my unk card for that one. And I feel like I would be able to like accurately rank, like if I had like 50 of like the best VGC players of all time. Yeah, I'll stay for your unk card, right? You know what I mean? Like I feel like I could accurately rank them pretty well. There's a lot of like I shouldn't say weird. There's a lot of like known European players from like 2012 to 2015 that I wish that they still played. And every once in a while, one of them kind of pops up at a regional that they haven't played in 10 years. And they're like, wow, who's this new player? And it's like, it's not a new player. Like, that guy just, he took a break. He went and got like a life, right? But, yeah, you know, there's a lot of like really good players all around the world. They recently did something on Limitless where I believe they cut all of the standings back to where the only standings that are on the list now are ones that you officially got money for, as far as the tournaments that they actually track. You know, there's a lot of tournaments still missing from like 2010 to 2016, 2017. But the only ones on the website now, I think, are ones that you get paid out for. So I know a lot of people are like raging that they're losing like all of their Limitless pages and all of their results. And so it's just kind of, you know, people are losing their history, you know. That was one way that people actually found like cool teams and cool history and stuff like that to keep that stuff alive. Because without it, like, VGC is not built like basketball or like football or other sports or even other esports. We don't have the infrastructure, right? I feel like with like League of Legends and, you know, other esports, there's like people whose like job it is to like be like the historian and know everything and know the results and stuff like that. And I feel like with VGC, we really don't have that much of that. Am I wrong? I feel like, you know, you get people that know things, but they don't go like out of their way to tell the stories. I feel like what we do need is someone that like accurately does. What would be really cool to do is to have someone like sit down, like have two players that remember stuff to like, yeah, summoning salt. Yeah, there's nothing like that. There's no like, you know, Thorin and Monte Cristo thing either. There's no summoning insight, right? That's not really a thing. We're getting there, but it'd be really cool to have someone like sit down and be like, this is what happened in 2011. This is what happened in 2012. This is the storyline. These were the players that were on the rise. Here are the, you know, resources that prove the point. A lot of the old Nugget Bridge articles are still around. I think the only person that I would trust to do something like that would be Trailer. I think Trailer would probably be the person best suited to do that. You guys can agree with that, right? I think Aaron Trailer would be the person best suited to do something like that, to like gather all that up, that has like enough connections, that knows enough, that was like active enough. Because like on like any sort of top cut, you know, best, like I would say if you were to ask like the top NA players of every single year of VGC going back to the creation, I almost want to say Trailer's like in that top 10 like every year. And that's like ridiculous. I think that's more of like a harder thing to do than even like a lot of the accomplishments like Wolf and Zhang. And there's a few years where like Trailer is arguably like the best player in the world. Sounds like sick. A speedrun history style video going into depth on each of the formats. I think that'd be cool. I'm not going to do that. You know, that's not my job. I can provide color commentary, but I'm not the VGC historian. So there's a few years though where Trailer kind of pops up as being like the best player in the world. I remember there was a time in like 2018, 2019 where like him and Joe UX9 were like really good. And then there was that weird span where like there was no one that could catch like Ashton and Beck. There's a lot of good storylines. I really think Trailer was arguably better than Wolf in all of Sword and Shield. Now I agree too. Yeah, I think Trailer wanted it more, you know? I think that's what it came down to. I think that's when Wolf got really big into like the content creation, and Trailer like found a meta that like suited their playstyle, leaned into it. Like I've played them at 2 regionals too. So it's like I have like firsthand experience of like, this guy's built different, you know? Like I feel like Trailer's one of those players. He's one of the last few, in my opinion, that know when you lean into a crit, that can like, you know, I think a lot of players when they're losing, they're just like, okay, I'm going to play standard until my opponent messes up. And even if I'm losing, like if I play like really, really well and really high level standard play and make a couple reads, like they might mess up. But Trailer knows that like one little situation in turn 2, where if they layer up their moves like this and get a crit with this one, the game's just over. It gets folded, right? So it's like, it's that like that high level player of difference that can be like, it's hard to notice that. I guess like for me, it's hard to pull a rug from me in the regional. Like there's regions where I'll lose, but it's more of like a a matchup loss. It's like, I don't have a matchup into that. Like, good call from our opponent. Or, you know, I don't have a matchup into this, or, you know, or I missed my own heat waves. But like, it's very not that often where I think I'm like, oh, I have a good matchup into this, and I still lose. And Trail is one of those people that can do that to me. False Swipe, when they do like a breakdown for a Pokemon, they find out like who did what with it. They reach out to them and like try their best to like go over it from like, so they get a lot of first party accounts from the Pokemon. I've collaborated with them for Sceptile, Garchomp, Butterfree. False Swipe is cool. Wish they do more into doubles. Yeah, they can't do both. You know, honestly, the reason why they do so much into singles is because singles is more popular. It's more popular. There are more people that play singles than doubles. Doubles is a niche, like hyper specific thing. It's not really meant to be popular. You think it's fun this time? You think Reg F is fun this time? My theory on VGC and Reg F and all that stuff like that, the only people that complain about Reg F are people that are like the 1% hyper competitive player base. For the general player, Reg F is actually a better format because it gives like anyone the chance to beat anyone. The only people complaining are the people that have the most to lose, because it gives the common people the power to take W's, because it's a much lower power scaling format, in my opinion. I enjoy Reg F, don't enjoy having to find battles, and that's the hard part, right? It's good for high level building, but hard to build a quick team that works. I agree with that too. You have to really find a good idea. There's a couple takes, because when you see people that are really good complaining, it makes you think that like their opinion is really valid. But like if they're the only ones that are complaining, that has to mean that like they're the only ones with this problem, which means it's a rich man's problem. It's a privileged person's problem. It's not a common person's problem. Like, bolt mirrors are not a problem for the common man. And I feel like you can just, like, that's the thing, is like, if you want to stop a bolt mirror, just put taunt on something. You know what I mean? And they don't want to be forced to bend the knee with that taunt. They don't want to be forced to like lower their amount of ability to leverage advantage into the game to the same level as the common people. I think that's what it is. That's my wild take here. That's my hot take. They're like, I can't believe you guys voted for this trash format. And it's like, this is a good format. Right? Yeah, I really feel that like you can make almost anything work. Yeah, I really feel that like Reg F is a format where a lot of things can happen, and the pro players don't want to have to get into mud fights. And so they don't like having to resort to 2-2-2, and they don't like having to resort to, you know, they don't like other players being able to like copy a team and play at their level, which is why they don't like this format. Right? I feel like with a lot of other formats, specifically restricted formats, if a new player were to copy like a single restricted or a double restricted team, a good player could outpilot them. But if you're copying someone that's copying like Psy-Spam Crown, you're really scared of them, even if they don't know what they're doing, because their amount of damage potential is ridiculous. And so puts the fear of God in them, you know what I mean? I like Reg F. I did not like Reg H. I did not like Reg H. Reg H was not a balanced format. Reg H was a power vacuum centered around one weather, and anytime you have one weather that's so much better than the others, you have like an unbalanced situation where like you're playing a matchup roulette where 2/3 of the time you're wrong if you're not playing what everyone else is playing. And that's not balanced. If you're 2/3 of the time going to be wrong in your power vacuum, you know, weather format, nah. That means you have to do what everyone else does. And if you do what everyone else does, the format can be fine. But see how you have to do that? And I don't like that. Yeah, rain was oppressive, right? And so like you had to bend the knee to rain. You could not like run other things that would like open up a hole to rain, because like rain was just too big. It's the same thing with like Big Six. Like, just because everyone does something, that doesn't make it good. You know, that doesn't make it balanced. That doesn't make it, it does make it good, right? But it doesn't make it like healthy. Yeah, because the problem is like what Mort's saying. Like, you basically have to bend the knee to have a good rain matchup, because so much of the player base has it. And then like you fight none of that in the regional. If you end up losing one of your first 2 rounds, you get put in the losers bracket where you're not fighting good players, and now all your tech that you had to use just to play the game doesn't work. And so that's not a healthy format. That's not like a good balanced format. A good balanced format is one where you can actually take a good team in like a wide variety of matchups and have like decent matchups into everything. Like, for example, like one of the reasons why Big Six was such a problem in 2016 is because you had to run Lumberry and like a second way to deal with Dark Void Smeargle. This was before safety goggles. This was before covert cloaks. This was before a lot of the defensive items that we have now. You had to run like Uproar, Chestoberry, and a Lumberry to like not lose to Scarf Smeargle. That's ridiculous. Dark Void Smeargle was terrible. It was pretty bad, right? So, you know, I was able to play around it. I don't think I ever lost to a Big Six team at a regional, if I'm being honest. I think I beat every single one I ever played. I only went to like 2 or 3 regionals that season, but I had really good lines in a Big Six, so it works for me, right? That's why Lumberry safeguard won Worlds, right? It is, you know, that's just what it was, right? I used Uproar Crobat as my Big Six check in a lot of regionals. Lumberry, Uproar Crobat, like, nope, nope. Soft check the Zern 2, pivoted on the P-Blades, like, whoo, sheesh. I think Reg F is probably the best it got, except the first few decks Reg. I like it more without Raging Bolt, though. Well, that's the thing, is it's like, I think the first few regs were not good. There was nothing. All right, so in the first 2 regs, there was nothing really to stop Murkrow-Dango, and there was nothing really to stop Dozo, unless you're running Murkrow-Dango. And even then, it's a 50-50 game, right? And then when we got to Reg C, then you had like Chi-Yu Flutter, you had Pow Knight, the format's shit from there, right? The first few regs were not balanced either. And the first few regionals of any game are never balanced because like it's everything, right? It is like everything at the same time. So I feel like, all right, let's actually think about it. I want to try and think of the one time we actually had, what's the most balanced format that's ever existed in Pokemon? What's the most balanced format we've ever had? Not a format where balance as a playstyle is good, but the most balanced format. I think if I had to pick, I would pick VGC 2013. That is a format where there were multiple different ways of playing, multiple different things. There were no quick, easy cheese wins. Like, I think if you were to compare 2013 to any other format, you might pick VGC 2018, but that was a format where we had like Lele Metagross, we had Japan Sand. Those were little bit aggressive teams where you could like steal wins. There was no stealing wins in 2013. You had to actually outplay every single opponent. So this is just a fundamental aspect of VGC, lack of balance viability. All right, so the way VGC works is, man, we're never gonna get to this tier list, right? That's fine. The way VGC works is you usually get a dex format where like the Pokemon that are in the decks are legal first. And we used to have VGC formats for more than a year. Like formats would come out in like October, December, and we'd have them all the way through until January 1st of the next year. So you think about it, we used to have formats for a whole year, which actually would lead to a lot more deeper metas. 2012 was Black and White and Black and White 2, yeah. So, you know, when 2011 came out, that was not a balanced format, because it was the 2011 Dex, which was locked away from like a lot of the other standard Pokemon, and you could only use things that were in Black and White. So basically, every single team was Terrakion, Virizion, Cobalion, Thundurus, Tornadus, Landorus, right? You might see a Mineshaow or an Amoonguss pop up, you know? Black and White was 2010. Black and White came out in 2010, but I think that it still used 2011 was our first year of Black and White as like VGC. Black and White also came out 2010 for like Japan and stuff like that. So the first year that like everyone got it, I was 2011, I believe. So the first year is basically the Pokemon that is in the decks, which can lead to like some Pokemon being like way, way, way better than others. And that leads more into like a good example is like Ultra Sun and Moon and Sun and Moon in general. So that's 2017, sorry, 2017 is Sun and Moon. The Tapus were like way better, and the Ultra Beasts were like way better than like 90% of the decks, right? So like those Mons are just way better. It's not balanced, right? There's nothing that's keeping up with Tapu Koko. Like your Pincurchin and Tapu Koko are not the same. Gotta go to bed. Bye. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much. Yeah. So And that's just the base form. You know, they're not we're excluding like mythicals and, you know, other like Ubers and stuff like that. And then you have a second format, right, where they expand the decks a little bit. And basically you can use things like, you know, other legendaries from previous games. That's where you can start using your Landorus's, you know, your Terrakions, your Articunos, things like that. That's the second year of the format, right? And then on the third year, what they usually like to do is open the decks up and have it be just everything, right? Just everything. Xerneas, Mewtwo, Groudon, Rayquaza, and just go nuts, right? So you have like 1 year of really low power scaling with like some really star like Pokemon that are way better than others. The second year is usually the best year in my opinion, where you can use a mixture of the, you know, sub-legendaries and the other previous Pokemon that were already in from the previous format. And then the last year, everyone gets big ass swords and you just hit each other in the face. I wish they had ways to rotate formats more. Hopefully something they will experiment with Champions comes out. See, I wish they rotated less, because when the formats rotate, it means that, like, all right, so for example, let's give an example. Let's say you were a player that wanted to play at NAIC, right? You wanted to play in the North American International Championships. That's not happening for like 5 months. And if you want if formats to change more, the format could change like 4 times between the time when you need to practice for your event. When are you going to practice for the event? Like, when will you know the rules for this, right? It comes down to like, if there's no way to practice for the event and there's no way to know what the format is, it doesn't help. That doesn't help. That hurts. Because like one of the benefits of having the longer formats, even the ones we have now that are usually 3 to 4 months, is like you can be like, okay, I want to go to this event in like 3 or 4 months. I have this much time to practice. This is what the ladder looks like. I can test it here. I can test it here. There's other players that are practicing for the same thing. But if the format changes every month, no, like there's no reason to play the new formats. What you would just do is wait until the format's out and you know its rule set and then play, right? But more variation, less repetition of formats. That's the thing, is like, I really think that a lot of you guys would benefit from having like the 13th, 14th month formats like we used to. You'd really see yourselves evolve as players, I think, if we had these longer formats. It's way healthier. It's way more conductive. Like, what you're able to do is see yourself leveling up and actually take a look back at your other sets and see like, wow, I can't believe I used to run this, or I can't believe I used to run this. And you're going to see yourself evolving because like the context stays the same, right? And you slowly like evolve your EV spreads over the time, and it compounds on the effect that you're like putting in with something. When you have like a format that's a format for a whole year, I think another really cool thing, this is just my dumb opinions here about older formats, is because we used to have formats for like a year. Like, I remember VGC 2013. I remember VGC 2016. It's easy to remember, like, you know, years that happen. Like, there's like, I'm older than you guys, right? So, you know, my friends are always like, oh, what happened in like 2014? Do you remember 2014? I was like, oh yeah, like that's X and Y. Like that's Garchomp like Mega Manetric year. You know what I mean? Like, so like I can categorize like all of like the years going back to like what Pokemon game released, what the meta was in either OU or VGC. And I think that's really cool. You know, it helps me memorize everything else. So I stopped playing ranked since the regulation is not the same. In like tournaments, I want to test teams online to get good practice. Tournaments is not good. I mean, you got to just play on Showdown, right? I can remember my old teams better than the ones I used 4 months ago. Yeah, like that's the thing. Like, I've used a lot of teams in tournaments. I've played in a lot of tournaments, and you used to spend like 3 to 4 months straight working on a team for one event. And this was before we had a lot of online tours. There wasn't weeklies. There's no limitless tours. You used to just spend like 4 months like working on a team. You'd maybe go to like 1 or 2 big events per year. And so like what you realized is by the time you actually went to the regional, you were like 8 times the player than like you would be now, just like rolling up and taking whatever you worked on like the week before to an event, right? You would know every line, you would know every team, there'd be ways to play against everything. Your defensive capabilities for how to handle cheese were like way higher because like it was close sheet, best of 1. Like, I don't know, man. I sometimes feel really like I miss a lot of the old formats and a lot of the old things like that. I really think we had it better than people like to recall. people like, used to think like, oh, you know, the formats were terrible, it was best of one close sheet, blah, 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 whatever. But like, there was so much more value to be had for like being someone that could succeed in that environment, I think. If you were someone that was able to make that work and make it become a strength, you became a much better overall player, a real Pokemon master, if you will, by being able to like handle every like crazy situation instead of just the, you know, open team sheet thing solved in front of you. It's funny, we used to also like, I think the ladder used to be different. The ladder didn't used to show your like also like exact rank, it used to show your points. Yeah, and that's another thing, like, so when we know that a format's gonna end, there's no reason to play it anymore. Ever. There's like, oh, like there's only like 2 more Reg F events, like I'm done, you know, might as well go hop on the next thing, you know? Yeah, so we used to have something called the global link for Sun and Moon, Ultra Sun and Moon. We also had it in Black and White and Black and White 2. And it was good. It was really, really good for like finding, you could go analyze like teams. It's also where you got rental codes. Rental codes used to be done on like an official Pokemon website. Imagine going to Pokemon.com, seeing what teams are doing stuff, searching a Pokemon and seeing all of the available rentals that that Pokemon is in. That's cracked. We used to have that. That used to be something that like we had that was taken away. Same thing. We used to be able to save replays. We used to be able to do so much. Remember when you got more rental slots, the more people you used your rentals? Yep, that's how it worked. So like you were actually as a person, because you used to have just one rental slot. And if you got like 100 uses on your rental, you get like a second one. So most people get that second one pretty easy, right? Or 100 downloads of your rental. And then like it incentivized you as a creator to make better rentals that were worth renting to unlock more of those rental slots. Rentals also be a QR code. Yeah, I have videos on my channel where like I don't think they work anymore. Let me find it. Yeah, so I made a couple of these where like I would show you guys like the coolest rentals featured in like a week, you know, and it was fun, you know, like we just had like different ways to like show the QR code and showcase other creators' rentals, and it was really, really cool. I really liked that it was all on the website. And also what I really liked about it is when you were fighting in someone else that had a rental code, it showed like that it was a rental. So if you knew the rentals EVs and spreads, you actually had a good matchup. They were actually disincentivized for using those rentals. So it was really cool. You know, I think that there's a lot of good stuff that we used to have back in the day that I feel has been like left by the wayside as Pokemon has become more optimized. You know, obviously one thing that's like a little bit easier to do now is like community tournaments. We didn't really have access to stuff like that. We have more online tours. We have a better online community and, you know, infrastructure and stuff like that that we didn't used to have back in the day. But that being said, like if you were a solo player, like I feel like all of the community aspects have been leveled up so much more. Community tournaments, you know, blah, 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 whatever, stuff like that. But if you were someone that just like really liked to analyze stats, you know, play your own pace, get like a high ladder ranking and like check out all the usage stats and stuff like that online and prepare for your events by yourself, there were way more tools to do it, I think, back then that were easier to access than the ones that they have now. Because I feel like what we have now is we have a lot of the like third-party websites that showcase a lot of these usage stats, things like Victory Road, think like Mouse Labs and other websites like that. And that sort of stuff is like locked behind like having good friends and good friend group connections versus like, you know, you could just go onto the official Global Link website, find anything you need and optimize anything you need and, you know, play to any sort of ladder rank you really wanted to. It wasn't uncommon for people to like, by the way, we used to have ladders seasons for like a whole month, right? Or 2-month period or whatever. It wasn't uncommon for people to get to like 2,300. That's ridiculous in like a ladder season because you just had so much longer to do it, right? I think people even got higher than that in some seasons, right? For reference, the highest, like so like, you know, when a global challenge happens and someone wins, the person that wins that has about 1850. Like, you really saw like a high level ladder because it was built on hundreds of games. And I really liked that. I really, really liked that. You could like curate your ladder account to actually give you only the good people. Like, you know, like sniping, how like sniping's a thing. Like sniping was not like a thing because like people in the 15 and 1600s couldn't snipe you, or if you were in like the 22, 2300s. Like, I could just stream easy peasy without like a fear in the world of getting sniped, because you could queue right into me and the game would not match us because you're not at that level. And like, you can't do that in this game. You know, if you're a Master Ball, it'll match with other people in Master Ball. So that's another thing that I feel like the ladder warriors got nerfed going into these newer gens. But hey, you know, that's just my opinion on that. I think I'm just an old head, and I think that I am gonna think like that for as long as I still play these games. Gotta wait a month for a Wolfie video. Every day I have lunch and dinner. That's a +1 video. Go to start to watch and it's goated. Yeah, well, that's the thing, is like Wolf, I think he made a video on one of his channels recently. I don't watch Wolf videos, but one came up that I did watch, and he said it takes like a month to make a video. A month. It takes a whole month. And basically what they're doing is they're working all day. So like, this video took a month, but they worked on it for like 20 minutes every day. And so like, when they make a video every week, they're getting it out, but it takes like a month of work. And I do not have like that level of attention to detail. I don't think I could spend a month working on a video. I talk about this all the time. The one thing that I lack is attention to detail. I'm very much so, this is at 70%, we're sending it. Like, I'm not your hyper editor. I'm not trying to play for perfection. What you want to do is raise all of the things you're working on to like a 70 or 80% and just send it. Because if you do that 70 or 80% over and over and over and over again, what you're going to realize is you're going to raise your base level to like a certain level that's just higher than everyone else's. Your ability, your conditioning. Like, think about it like a muscle. Like, I'm not trying to rep like 8,000 pounds. I'm trying to rep like a lot, as much as I can, to where like I'm just in, you know, overall better shape for anything that I'm working on, you know? If I was a big YouTuber, I would upload the exact same thumbnail every video and see if anyone notices. See, that's the thing. You really shouldn't do that. Like, the closest that you can get is, you see how like on these videos, the thumbnails are similar but different. And you can't see it because the text is right there. But like, you see a lot of people that upload like the exact same thumbnail thinking it's going to give their series like longevity. And that is not the case, because people don't know the difference, right? Yeah, if it looks the same, I will notice and I won't watch the new one, right? So it's like the closest you can get. I'm testing it right now, kind of like with, you know, look at all the different Sceptile thumbnails. They're like similar enough. All the Cresselia thumbnails, they're similar enough, but there is drastic difference in them. So you know that it's a Cresselia series, but like the Pokemon that's being featured is slightly different, right? So I'm still testing it though. But there's a lot of cool stuff going up on this channel. I really have moved like a lot of my VGC content over to this channel. And it's been fun, you know. I think it's been good. Thank you guys for watching this stuff on this channel. Today's video was actually really funny, so I really like today's video. I love +1 videos because they don't feel clickbaity to me. Everything I need to know in the thumbnail, and that makes me want to watch it. I mean, that's the idea, right? You know, we kind of just give you what you think, but it's cool. You know, I have a lot of fun. I think my favorite thing about YouTube is actually making the thumbnails. My favorite thing about YouTube is making my thumbnails. And I've thought to myself, why don't I just like make thumbnails for other people? And I don't think I would have as much fun making thumbnails for other people. I like making my thumbnails. It's fun. I almost see it as like its own kind of math problem, because I don't use all of like the hyper editing programs or Photoshop or anything like that. So it's like, I really have to find ways to make like my limited knowledge of photo editing like work for me. I don't use AI, you know, same thing for the tags and the titles. Like, I could seriously like yap about YouTube analytics and, you know, optimization for hours. Like, that's probably, if I'm not even kidding, my favorite thing. Like, my favorite hobby is just like learning how to like optimize like YouTube for growth and finding the other little niches you can use to explore and, you know, get more discovery. I find that stuff so interesting, way more interesting than Pokemon. Like, Pokemon is for me just like an avenue to let me explore that stuff even more. And so it's fun to like play the whole YouTube like algorithm game, especially like when I'm streaming. Like right now, what I'm doing isn't really Pokemon stuff, or even if I was playing a game, it's not even playing a game, it's playing Streamer Manager 2000. I'm like managing the stream, making sure I'm going to the right windows, talking about the right stuff, having the right sort of, you know, engagement and everything like that. As a beginner, how do you find a playstyle you like? It's a great question. I would really recommend taking a look at all of the viable Pokemon in the format, and then maybe finding a team that works with one of them. So if you're really a big fan of like Garchomp, go search up Garchomp in any of the recent tournament pages and stuff like that. See any of the teams that feature Garchomp, play with that team, see do I like this one, do I not like this one, go to the next. You can also just build a team of like 6 Pokemon that you like and just hop into games. I would really just recommend playing a ton of games until you find something to where whatever you're doing, if it makes you feel like you're better, if it makes you feel like you're overperforming given your certain level of skill, that's something that you have like an inherent click with. That means that like something about that resonates with the way that you look at the game, and you should lean into that. So if you ever find that winning is too easy with something, that means that like you should probably be playing that, if that makes any sense. So it's like you should just find like a bunch of different teams or play with a bunch of different teams, and when you finally find that one that seems like, wow, this was like free for no reason, even if you can't explain why, like let's compare it to like any other sport, right? There's some people that just have like a God-given talent to play basketball. They can't explain it, but like when they shoot the ball, it goes in, and so you might be like that player for like Chi-Yu Flutter. You can't explain why you're so good with it, but something about how you play leans into like leveraging that advantage. I won a ton of games with 222 Dozo, but it gets such negative commentary, so. All right, okay, like I'm a big fan of this topic, so we're gonna talk about it. The only people complaining about how other people play the game are that is just coming from either an insecurity about their play or their fear of what you're playing. You don't see like Wolf Glick complaining about Dozo because he doesn't care that they're playing Dozo. Does that make sense? Like, no one really cares what anyone else plays, and if someone's like going out of their way to like bully people out of playing something, that says more about them than it does about you, right? Like, my NAIC team last year was baton pass minimize to like set up Dozo and just stall them, like literally PP stall, timer stall them out of the game. And you know what happens when you play stuff like that? This happened to a lot of people that I played too. And you take like the full timer and you're just sitting there writing in your notebook, get like so tilted, and they start making misplays. And again, when they start to overextend and push lines that shouldn't be working, they try and rush the game. You can punish that if you play calm, right? So I really think like, Dozo's fine. I really think that anyone can play Dozo if they want to. I don't think I've ever really looked down at a person for playing Dozo, because there's 2 types of Dozo players. Let's be real. There are 2 types of Dozo players, everybody. There are the people that are Glamora, Annihilate, Final Gambit, 222 Dozo glue eaters, right? I'm saying I don't look down on Dozo players and I say that, right? And then there's actually like high level Dozo players that have like so many lines involved that if like Chuppa is a really, really high level Dozo player. Diamond's another really high level Dozo player. But there's also like the 5 or 6 people that are just at regionals with like some Dozo Glim team. And the cool thing is Dozo is actually a really high skill ceiling Pokemon. So like if someone's using a Dozo team and they don't know what they're doing, you're just going to win. You don't need to think that they're dumb. You don't need to think that they're bad. You don't need to talk them out of doing it. You just need to take your W. You shouldn't be like, man, screw that guy. He's using something so broken and he's not even smart. That's so dumb. You should actually be thinking like, I'm so happy I get my free win for someone that's trying to cheese me, right? That's how you should look at it, right? It's literally like when your opponent comes at you with like lazy tech, like punish it. It's not hard, My concern was if I'm losing some kind of skill gains. So that's the thing, like, okay, let's think about, all right, let's compare this, right? We've been using a lot of like gym comparisons and sports comparisons. So if you're going to a tournament and you're playing Dozo, let's compare that to like a bodybuilding like competition, like a strongman competition. all the work that they did to practice was done in the gym before. They're just going in there and doing their 1-2 flex, showing off their lines, right? Same thing for like a basketball game. That's one game, right? That's one tournament, one situation. The skill that you should be developing is in your practice. That's what you should be building on. And one thing that a lot of people don't understand is that every type of skill that you level up in VGC all counts. Let's say you play 100 games with Dozo. Well, that's going to put 100 points into your Dozo category, which also is going to put a couple points into all these other categories that are similar to Dozo. If you're playing like 2-2-2 Dozo, if you're playing like Weather Dozo or Intimidate, some other sort of, Tinglu Dozo thing equivalent, you might get leveled up in some other things. But then when you're done playing that Dozo team, that experience doesn't go away. It's still up here, which means when you want to play other teams, you're getting more experience in these other categories. And what you're trying to do is level up all of these categories into situations where the few that bleed together, they're the ones that become the top of the mountain. Does that make sense? Because you're adding in all of the different types of experiences that you're developing in multiple different formats and multiple different teams over multiple different years of playing. So every experience is valuable, whether it be winning, losing, anything like that, right? So it's like everything that you do. That's why you see me just like build a random team and just hop on a ladder with it, because like that's going to be something that's valuable later. I say it all the time. Like that might be like, all right, we used a team the other day that was like, we built a team that was this one in one of like our Patreon situations, and it didn't do that hop, but it was okay. But then like, you never know. There might be a format where Slitherwing absolutely breaks the format in half, and now we have actual experience with Slitherwing Sandy Shocks that no one else ever does. Right? We have that unique insight that no one else does. So when the meta shifts into enabling something like this, we are the ones with the skill to capitalize. I think people downplay 2-2 Dozo because of simple lines. Same reason people hate on Psy Spam. I think so too. People think that VGC has to be something crazy. You see the same thing in chess. People like to compare chess and VGC, but the amount of hate that people get for playing the London is like ridiculous. It's ridiculous. The London, like, if you're bad, if you're like not good and you play the London, you're not gonna beat someone who's like that much better than you. It's an easy, basically the strength of the London is it's an opening that makes you not lose within like the first 4 turns of the game. It basically prevents you from blundering your queen within like the first 5 moves. Imagine trying to win in a competition, I know, right? But the same thing. That's like where one of the strengths of like Dozo play is it makes you're not losing the game on the first turn. It might be like your 3rd turn you lose, right? So it makes it so good players can't leverage that advantage versus other like lesser players as easy. Doesn't this kind of look past how most players play an unbelievably narrow meta to win ever? So their opponents almost always have to play that same narrow meta to counter it. Anti-meta only goes so far. I actually think that, that's one of the strengths that we used to talk about how formats used to be for like those 12 or 13 month periods. It was much easier to develop an anti-meta when the meta was so much healthier and robust and developed, right? Right? When everything is like known and solved, like 10 months into a format, that's when like the Fling Kings Rock, that's when like the niche Encore user or Taunt user, or, that's where like, Ashton Cox was able to win an international championship with like side fling Papa Berry into like weakness policy Lunala stuff. That's where that comes out, is when the formats are actually very developed, in my opinion. You just don't have time for that now. There's no need to get crazy when the format is going to change every 2 weeks. You might as well just use the best team that's quick to learn. Yep, easy peasy. And the players that are the best at like learning those lines and optimizing their actual play in game are the ones that are rewarded. That's why you see players like MDB or Poke Alex or let's think of some NA players that are also like that. Paul Chua, they're a great example. They can just outplay people in game. You can take the same team, like if you were to give me and Paul Chua the same team and make us play 10 games, I might win 1. He's like that much better at like playing just the base game itself. I think he's even better than like Wolf at like playing the actual game itself. He's ridiculous. Since you're the seasoned player with a decade or 2 of experience, how robust / varied would you call the current VGC meta on a scale of 1 to 10? the current 3 or 4. And the only reason it's even that high is because this is the second coming of Reg F. This is the second coming of Reg H. This is the second coming of Reg G, right? We're actually getting a full year eventually of all of these formats. Because if you think about it, like this is Reg F 2.0, but we knew about it like a month or two before it started, and we knew about it a month or two before it started the first time. So this is actually like month 10 or 11 of Reg F. Actually, on my Patreon, there's like almost 70 Reg F teams. And that's a good amount, you know? We've had Reg F for a good amount of time right now.